Hello, is it your dream to buy a property here in Spain? My name's Jo Ashbury, and if you've seen any of our other Casabluehills videos, you'll know that a little over 2 years ago, me and my husband Rob bought our house here in Spain, and it's just been absolutely wonderful. So if it's your dream to buy a house here in Spain, I'm going to tell you exactly how you can do it step by step. First of all though, you may have heard in the media some scare stories that the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is going to introduce a 100% property tax on foreigners when they buy a house. Well, I'll talk about that later, but it's not bad news, don't worry. Okay, so the very first thing you need to do if you're going to buy a property here in Spain is get your NIE number. That is Número de Identificación de Extranjero, foreigners identification number. Okay, so there are a number of ways to get this, but you have to get it. It's the first thing you need to do because it can actually take up to 6 weeks to get the appointment for you to present your documents and get your number. Okay, so one way you can do it is go to the Spanish government's website. Most of the links are now in English, and you can fill the form in and apply for your appointment to show your documents to someone at the consulate. So you can do that if you want to. However, the main form you have to fill in is, I believe, when I last checked, it's still in Spanish, and it's very, very complicated and quite unclear. So I would recommend you don't do that way. What we did was we paid a company €30, around €30 each. We sent them our information and they applied on our behalf for an appointment at the main police office in Alicante. You can choose which police office you want to go to. For us it was easiest to get there. So if you do the same, they set the company you pay your €30 to sends you your appointment through. You go and queue up outside the police office in Alicante. You take the form that the agency has filled in for you, your passport, and you present your documents to a Spanish police officer. If everything's in order, you get your NIE number there and then. It's an A4 piece of paper with your number on, signed by hand by a police officer. There is another way you can do it. If you go and search on your normal search engine, NIE number Spain, you will get a list of companies. You will get a list of companies offering that option that I've just said that we did, and then further down the page you'll get more expensive options, which is basically where a company will take your details and they will apply for the number on your behalf. I think they charge somewhere around €450, and you have to give them power of attorney. So you've got that more expensive option, but that might be simplest for you, and it means you don't have to travel to Spain if you weren't going there anyway. So that's your NIE number. Once you've got that, you can now buy a property. However, what you do need to do is have some way to pay for your property in euros. For us, that was opening a Spanish bank account. Once again, go to your search engine, type in Spanish bank account, read through the different options. Most of them have fees. For the bank account we've chosen, as long as you keep €1,000 in your account, you don't have any charges. So that's worked quite well for us. Bear in mind that if you don't speak any Spanish, you will probably find, well, it's almost certain that you will find someone who speaks English, who works in a bank in any of the main resorts. If you buy somewhere inland, it's less likely. The person might know a few words of Spanish, but don't bank on it. So just be aware of that. Some people don't open a Spanish bank account. They use something like Wise, which is just an online service, I believe. Okay, so you've got your NIE number, you've opened your Spanish bank account, you can now make that offer on your dream property. At this point, I'm just going to give you a bit of friendly advice. Ignore me if you want to. It would be a good idea to start learning some basic Spanish. That will help you get to know Spanish people, help you get to know your neighbours, and just help you in those situations where the person doesn't speak English and maybe you haven't got your phone to use Google Translate. I've just recently started offering online basic and essential Spanish lessons. So if you would be interested in learning Spanish in a group of 3, yourself and 3 other people with me once a week, then I'll give you all the details for this at the end of the video. Okay then, you want to buy a property in Spain, you need to know how much extra you have to allow on top of your purchase price. As a general rule, you need to allow 10 to 14% depending on which area of Spain you're buying in. Anyway, something else then, I'm not giving you any legal advice in this video, I'm giving you information. I'm not trained as a lawyer, I am trained as a teacher. Okay, so then, what do you need to allow on top of your purchase price? The first thing you need to allow is, if you're buying a new house, you will have to pay VAT. That will be 10%. Also, if you are buying a new house, you will have to pay, and I've just got to check this because we didn't pay this, AJD tax, which is like stamp duty in the UK, and that can be anything from 0.5% to 2%, and that AJD tax is just when you're buying a new property. So new property, VAT 10% plus AJD 0.5 to 2%. On the other hand, if like us, you're buying a second-hand property, then that will be a similar amount, but it could be 6% to 10%. That again varies by region. For example, in the Basque Country, I think it's as low as 4%, whereas in Catalonia, it is 10%. So that is the biggest extra cost you will have to pay. Someone asked me, do they haggle on property prices here in Spain? This is what happened to us. Our house was for sale at €42,000. We offered €36,000 and the seller agreed to €39,000. So yes, by all means, have a go. I think it's just the same as in the UK. So make your offer and see what happens. Okay, so there we go then. We've got the price of the property. We've got either the VAT and AJD or the property transfer tax. The next thing you're going to have to pay is legal fees. You need to budget around 1 to 2% for your legal fees, and please have a solicitor. I'm going to say something really terrible now. We didn't use a solicitor when we bought our house. We were just trying to keep the costs really low. But if I was buying another property ever, I would definitely use a solicitor, because I can't believe that we dared to buy one without it. Anyway, that's my advice to you. Use a solicitor. What next then? Notary fees. When you sign your contracts, notice I say contracts, I'll come on to that in a minute, you will go to a notary office, and the total fees for the notary and the land registry fees will be based on the price of your property and be somewhere between 0.1% of the property and 2% of the property. So those are the 4 main costs you will pay. Price of your property, either VAT or the property transfer tax, legal fees, and notary and land registry fees. If you were getting a mortgage, you'll need to allow for that. You may also need to budget for having your water and your electricity connected. You might want to have a survey. In Spain, they are called Inspección Técnica de Edificios. That's something else I had to write down because we didn't have a survey either. But of course, I am advising you to have one. And finally, once you've bought your house, you will need to have home insurance. And ours is about €330 a year. So that is quite a lot less than in the UK, for us anyway. Okay, so those are your costs. Now I'll talk about the actual process. But actually, before I do, just a brief note about this scare that was in the media. This is what I found out from the research I've done. Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, made a speech saying he was going to clobber foreigners who are buying houses and get them to pay more money so that it was fairer for Spanish people when they're buying a property. Well, there is a shortage of houses in Spain at the moment. Building materials are more expensive since COVID, and there's nowhere near the same amount of houses being built as there were 10 years ago. However, when foreigners are buying properties in Spain, it tends to be houses that are near or on the coast. Quite often it's big expensive villas with swimming pools. Sometimes it's little cheap doer-uppers, inland. But for example, in this village, there are lots of other houses, well not lots, there are a few other houses for sale, and mainly people are leaving these villages and going to cities because that's where the jobs are. So I read a lot of information on Idealista. Idealista is like the equivalent to the UK's Rightmove. Basically, they know everything there is to know about buying and selling property in Spain. And their information says it's going to be extremely unlikely for the Prime Minister to get this law passed, and they don't think there is any chance it is going to get passed. And even if it did get passed, it would be challenged by the EU. So it's really looking like it was just a flash in the pan, Prime Minister trying to boost his popularity. So obviously, nobody wants Spaniards to be short of a house, but it's extremely unlikely that this law would make any difference. Right then, let's quickly get on to the actual property buying process. Okay, number one, you make your offer. Number two, it's accepted. Then the seller will ask you to pay a deposit. You will be asked to pay approximately 10% of the price you have agreed on. You will go to the notary's office or your solicitor if you give them power of attorney, and I'm going to move just in case you can't hear me properly. Okay, don't get me wrong, I love a nice chat with the neighbours, and I'm sure I'll be having one or two later, but right now I do need to get this finished. Okay then, so the property buying process. You've agreed your price and the seller asks you for a deposit, normally around 10%. That's what we paid. So you or your solicitor, if you've given them power of attorney, will go to the notary office, the office that you agree on, normally the closest one to where the house is, and you will sign something called the Contrato de Arras. That is a legally binding contract. You are paying 10% of the price of the property. If for any reason you change your mind, you lose that money. So you need to be completely certain that you want this property and you're going to go ahead with this purchase. If, oh my goodness, if the seller changes their mind and they pull out, then they have to give you 20%. Okay, so it's worse for them if they change their mind, they give you 20%. Right, so then, after you have signed that contrato de arras, you have a time span which you and the seller agree on, normally 30 days, can be as many as 45 days. By the end of that time, you have to buy the property. You have to give them the rest of the money. Okay, so this contrato de arras, ask your solicitor for a translation, because even if you can read Spanish, it's written in legal language and it's incredibly difficult to understand. So ask your solicitor for a translation. Right then, so at this point, here's another piece of useful advice. In my extremely humble opinion, I wouldn't buy a property that you've just seen online without seeing it, because you might find you've got yappy dogs next door. You might find there's a really smelly chicken farm up the road. Thank goodness we haven't got one. Or you might find you've got neighbours, not like our lovely neighbours, but you might find you've got neighbours you don't like. So please go there and have a look round. Once, twice, same as in the UK, go there at different times of day. Okay then, so 30 days after you've signed your contrato de arras, you will go to the notary's office again, or if you've given your solicitor power of attorney, they will go. You will sign the contract, you will pay the money, and that's it. You will own your wonderful dream home in Spain. Your solicitor will pay the land registry fees, and then a few days later you will get your deeds of your house, which is called an escritura. As soon as you've signed the contract and the money has been paid, you get the keys and you can move in. How wonderful. So earlier on I mentioned that I am offering online basic Spanish classes. So I speak Spanish and French because I'm a teacher of Spanish and French. For these lessons, as online lessons to other people who want to learn basic and essential Spanish. So if this is something that you think you'd be interested in, drop me an email and I'll send you information and how much it costs and anything else you want to know about it. Okay. Before I go, I'd like you to have a look at this list. Don't sign anything at all until you've checked each one of these points. If you've got any questions, anything I didn't cover, then let me know in the comments. So thanks for watching. Hope it's been useful. Best wishes. I'll have to see you later. You do. Okay. Hello. Good girl. Yep. I'm just doing this running. Oh, I've just started filming and Morena's appeared, which is lovely. You're going to sit there? Good girl. Okay. You sit there then. Oh, that is amazing. Just have to film this. So there she is. That's lovely. Okay. Good girl. Right, back to filming.